world. If you are on Native American ancestral land, please let us know. You can put it in the chat. And please also let us know your pronouns. After the talk, we will have a short question and answer session, and there will be you will get the information on how to contact Dr. Tyffani once we are done. And I pass it off to Dr. David Ragland. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm really loving your outfit. Like, it's super cool. Um, I'm Dave Ragland. I'm one of the co-founders of the Truth Telling Project, and I'm super happy today to really talk about the Radical Truth Teller Award. And this award is in part about highlighting activists who tell the truth, who unapologetically tell the truth when it's not convenient. But it's also about highlighting activists who are doing dope organizing and work. And part this award highlight started with maybe about 5 years ago with a project that we were calling Support an Activist. And every month we would raise money and highlight activists who are doing good work. And along with this, I would like for just to remind Tyffani to tell us or put in the link places that you want us to donate to all the people who are on the call. And throughout the month, we will continuously share that. And we will also provide an honorarium for Tyffani for today. But without further ado, I want to just share a little bit about Dr. Dent, Dr. Monford Dent. And I want to say um, I have known Tyffani Monford Dent for going on, I don't even want to say how many years, but since undergrad. I know we both look young, and we are young, right? I don't want to say we're not. But I met Tyffani my freshman year in college. And Tyffani was an active person on campus. And when we were talking about this award, I was saying to Tyffani, like when do we ever stop being that, like, how like in high school, there's archetypes of people, like you got the student council people. Right. I mean, in college, it's like student council people, fraternities, sorority, like, athlete, jock, or whatever. And I was definitely a student council person. And I was just sharing, like, when am I going to stop being that archetype of a student council person? And I think we're both talking about just people who care, continue to care. And it's partly, I know that Tiffany has an amazing family, but I just want to say, in addition to this amazing background story that we have, Dr. Tyffani Monford Dent is a licensed psychologist, author of 4 books: Girls Got Issues, Women's Guide to Self-Discovery and Healing, You Got This, A Girl's Guide to Growing Up, Black Girl Unapologetically and Reclaiming Me, Beginning My Journey to Overcome Human Trafficking. Make sure you check out her work. It is really important in this world of continuous violence against women, particularly BIPOC girls, Black girls especially. Dr. Dent has served on several national, state, and local boards and committees addressing sexual violence, and is really connected in this movement. When this movement started in the way that we're seeing it now, probably a little bit more than or less than a decade ago. I noticed some of the people who are doing this work was Tyffani Montford Dent, like people who I went to school with, and we reconnected over that. And I'm just honored to be in this struggle and in this movement with you, Tyffani. And I want to hear about your work and about the radical truth telling that you're doing. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, David. It is funny. Again, we are doing the same in the same spaces as we were in college. Again, I'm a licensed psychologist. I call myself a psychologist for the culture because in the work I do, I try to center the needs of my community because I do believe that mental health is a part of our healing. I am the co-founder of Centering Sisters, which is an organization that centers the needs of Black women, girls, and femmes. We have held workshops addressing intergenerational relationships with Black women and girls, um, hosted a social justice retreat for Black women and femmes who are doing this work just to have a place of healing, a place of connection. And we do a video cast every 2 weeks where we focus on issues and how they are relevant to Black women, girls, and femmes. So that is a little bit about me. As was mentioned, I've served on boards, kind of addressing these issues. Also, unfortunately for my children at time, I've been in the streets. That has a different connotation when you're doing activism work than it used to. Like I'm out here in these streets. And then on a daily basis, just try to figure out how I can best support the work of those who are trying to change this world to make it better for our community. So one of the things that happened was I told David, I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to say and what I have to say. That always freaks me out. So what I decided to do is just kind of look at, and we'll mention briefly, when I thought about what does radical truth mean to me, what are those components that are radical truth for me. So I broke it down. And so here are my radical truths. Mental health professionals serving Black people must do social justice work. We cannot fully address the racial trauma, stress, oppression, healing, mental health of Black folks if we are not also actively engaged in changing the world, advocacy, policy, insisting within our communities, insisting within our agencies that it has to change, that we cannot send them back into the world, into systems that are going to continue to marginalize them. The other thing is my radical truth is I'm all about we must value and center Black girls. Within our community, we will often focus on race only. And even when we don't, we focus on the impact of what it means to be Black and male within our community, within the larger society. And in doing so, we are consistently overlooking how Black girls are impacted. They are disproportionately disciplined for the same offenses as their white counterparts within their school systems. We fail to address the sexual abuse to prison pipeline or how Black girls are disproportionately victims of human trafficking, in part because no one cares about them, no one looks for them, and then they also have the characteristics that make them more vulnerable in the first place. When we talk about sexual victimization, we blame them for their own victimization, often encompassed in this expectation that they are fast, or because they place themselves in situations that they somehow are the ones who are the architects of their own abuse, instead of holding the ones who harm them accountable. And we've also seen in the recent murder of Ma'Khia Bryant, how in all of this, including in the research of the Georgetown study, where we talk about not nurturing Black girls, not protecting Black girls, having higher expectations as it relates to adultification of Black girls, that our community fails to give Black girls grace. My another radical truth is it is not enough to build resilience. We must also build our resistance. We must acknowledge systemic racism and oppression, but we also have to identify ways to stay sane, safe, and thrive within a world that seeks to uphold white supremacy and that seeks to do everything but allow us to thrive. But at the same time, we must also implement strategies of resistance, and this can be multifaceted in order to change the world that continues to oppress us, that makes us have to be resilient in the first place. Self-care, as Audre Lorde talked about, is truly self-preservation, and it is an act of political warfare. Even in doing this movement work, which David and I were talking about earlier. Vicarious trauma is real. Compassion fatigue is real. We are not good for ourselves or if our community if we do not rest. And I'm a hypocrite because I say it and I don't do it. Our very existence is political. And a part of the message in this political arena we must send is that we do insist upon Black joy. We create it, we make time for it, we have to celebrate it. Everyone does not want change. And some may want what is incremental change that will only result in maintaining the status quo. Social justice work is based upon the premise that what is occurring now is at a minimum not beneficial to most people, and at a maximum is just purely oppressive. In this work, we know that there's going to be pushback. They talk, and even when they talk about all skinfolk and kinfolk, where that pushback comes from can be many a place. We know that there are threats. There is an insistence that change does not need to happen. There's an insistence upon how change needs to occur, that all it's going to do is maintain the status quo. Social justice is not justice if it fails to be intersectional. Our community is diverse. It is cis and trans. It is LGBTQIA+ and heterosexual. It is religious in all ways that can manifest, and it's not. True justice is not achieved without including the voices and the needs of everyone within our community, and insisting that justice is not truly achieved until none of us are marginalized, oppressed, or otherwise left out has got to be our mandate, has got to be our marching orders, has got to be our demand. Radical truth is owning your mistakes. In this work, I have made them. I am mortified sometimes when I look back. Facebook can get you because you look back at some of your belief systems for 10 years ago and you're like, oh my God. But that also means that radical truth is evolving. Radical truth is insisting that there are safe spaces for the most marginalized in our community to feel safe, loved, and protected. Radical truth is understanding that not everything is about you, but that everything has got to be about our community. Radical truth is learning from our elders while making space for those who come behind us to lead and shape the next phase of the work we're doing. Radical truth is standing in your truth, even when it is so very hard to do. And in standing in that truth, we must do so unapologetically. So that is my truth. Thank you.
Yay. So dope. I have lots of questions, and before I want to see if there are other folks who want to offer up some thoughts. But that was amazing, and um, especially like owning up to one's own mistakes. I want to maybe talk about that, and you know I felt like, what's the word? Like when somebody says something and you just like, ugh, like, like, um, like definitely challenged, right, by my own beliefs in the past, and like owning up to stuff that I've done in this movement, and the growing, right? And I've never heard it articulated as like the radical truth telling is like the growing, right? The growing, the when we become aware, right, of the things like we grow. And I can just share like some of like, in undergrad, I think I held some beliefs that were homophobic. And then my sister came out, right? And that was like 20 years ago, but still like, no excuse for somebody who, like, I felt that I was, even at that time, I thought I was somebody who was, really open and progressive. even back then. So I'm going to talk. Can you talk a little bit about the radical truth telling as like growing in your truth and being able to like take in more expansive views,
And I think one of the things for me is
particularly for our community?
and I think one of the things for is a lot of times we have to do some hard self-evaluations, because a lot of times we come into our lives, into our work, with messages that have been taught to us, that have been passed down to us, whether it's from the church, whether it's from our families, whether it's from the community as a whole. And those messages are sometimes toxic. Those messages are often harmful to those within our community, and within the whole need for uplifting of everyone. And so I think part of it is really checking yourself. I know a big one for me that I'm always having conversations with Black women about is, let's look at some of these messages that you have internalized that you keep passing on to Black girls. Messages about you are responsible for the action, the way that men and boys choose to treat you, versus they are responsible for how they treat people. The expectations that you must be a martyr for your community, that we will amplify you, we will elevate you as long as you sacrifice almost to the point of death, emotionally and physically. And that those are that the patriarchal messages that we have, that who can lead movement spaces, who has to be centered in movement spaces, who are valued, that will justify a movement happening. And when we are able to kind of process where those came from, and are they really detrimental to the work we're doing, are they leading us where we need to go, then we need to sit ourselves down, address them, acknowledge them, and consciously on a daily basis make sure that we are speaking that truth and that we are living it. Our movement spaces are sometimes some of the most patriarchal spaces ever. And that has been generational. And those are some of the messages that we bought into. And understanding that when you are evolving, that it's uncomfortable because it's different. Anything new is uncomfortable. And in that, you are going to receive pushback, because there are going to be those within the movement spaces, within our community, who want things to be the same. And so allowing ourselves to challenge that, and allowing ourselves to look and say, is the way that we're doing this, does this uplift our entire community? And are we including our entire community? When we say Black folks, for me, when I say Black folks, I'm talking about my cis and trans sisters. I'm talking about both of those groups. I'm talking about my LGBT brothers and sisters. I'm talking about girls. I'm talking about women. I'm talking about people who are not religious. And unfortunately, when we're talking, we've decided who are we trying to save, in quotes, and it doesn't look like everybody in our community, and we have to work to challenge that.
Thank you. I mean, I have more to say about this too, because it's super deep, but I'll open it up for other folks who have questions as well. I think Melinda, you gotta unmute. Okay.
This isn't a question, and I know that this is not a confessional.
It's okay.
But I'm carrying something with me that, that you just hit on for me. And because before people got on, I shared with you that I went to Ohio State. My first year teaching was in a school within what was called then the Red Line District, an all-Black school. And this is 1973. And in our box of pencils and rulers and staplers was a wooden paddle. And I just want to say, I came from a memorial, so I'm a little on the edge. But I had, what we called then an open classroom, learning stations all around the room. And the sound of the classroom, it was a little elevated, more so than the other more traditional classrooms. And I remember that teachers pressured me with this one little girl. I can still see her face, to use the paddle. And I remember having just like, I resisted, and I finally fell to the pressure because I found myself getting to that point of frustration. And I took her out into the hallway and I said, and I don't remember the words that came out of my mouth, but I just did like one little tap. And that has stuck with me forever. Like, what is it when our public school system sends these messages to little girls, little Black girls, about their behavior? And I don't know where, I'm not going any place with this. It's just something that I've been carrying with me. And I think, I don't even know where I'm going with this. So somebody feel free to pick up where you think I should be going with it, because I really just 23 years old in a hallway in Kent Elementary School with a little paddle in my hand and a gorgeous little Black girl that I'm crying about. I've got nothing more to there's a, you know, you can take that, you know, just maybe talk about our public schools and what it is that our public schools um, ought to be doing that they're not, to foster Black joy.
I'll say one of the things, I don't believe in hitting children. That was one of those evolution things for me. I was not a hitter of my children ever, but did not stop the elders in my family initially from that the first time. And then I realized you wouldn't put your hands on an adult like this. I I've always acknowledged that I understand where it came from. A lot of our bad practices come from fear. We are identifying these as ways that we can keep Black children safe. If I hit you and I get you under control, then no one else is going to have to. But my thing is that my hitting you is just replacing someone else hitting you. And so I don't understand that concept. So I've gotten a lot of pushback on that. I love the work of Dr. Stacey Patton. Her research has been on corporal punishment in Black children and how that is trauma. So I'm not a believer in that. As it relates to schools, I think there's a couple issues that we run into in the school systems for Black children. One of the issues is here in Ohio, schools are funded based upon property taxes. One of the things that studies show us nationwide is that if a community, no matter how beautiful the home, no matter any of that, they are undervalued because Black people live there. And so when that is the case and you're basing school funding upon property taxes and you devalue, no matter two communities looking the same, and it's just who's living there, Black school districts suffer. We also seem to have this tendency of pushing for compliance in Black children. A friend of mine is doing a book on where she's looking at Black girlhood, and one of the chapters in there, we were all meeting talking about schools. And one of the things that came up is that a lot of times school districts in Black communities are not teaching Black students to think. They're not teaching for themselves. They're not teaching Black students to be creative. They're not allowing for them to question anything. They operate by bells. They operate by be quiet. They operate by stand in line, single file. And one of the conversations we had is, we are not setting you up to be leaders. We are setting you up to work on an assembly line. We are setting you up to be in a position where others tell you what to do because it's about compliance. And I noticed that difference when my daughter went to a different school. And students lounging. If it's a break, you lounge wherever. There's not policing. There are counselors. All of the things that are set up is to make this a learning environment. And for our Black children, unfortunately, it seems that the message that's being sent is compliance versus learning versus growth. Which is the reason why we see more police officers in our schools, and they call them resource officers. I don't care, because you turn into a police officer when you decide to arrest a child in that school, versus therapists, versus more guidance counselors, more mentoring programs. And so if one of the places that major change needs to happen is in the school, because we need to really assess why our school districts in terms of resources, again, because of property taxes, are underfunded. There is not, and even a lot of times the teachers within those districts are looking at compliance. And when a student questions, specifically a Black girl questioning, instead of it advocating for herself, instead of it being looked at as she has a right to ask questions in order to figure out what her thoughts are going to be, we call it oppositional, and then we punish it. So our school systems, for me, are one of the most difficult places, which is why I started a mentoring program for Black girls. At a middle school, they were being disproportionately pushed out. I said, I'm doing this for Black girls because you know what? I'm doing it for free. So you can't tell me what to do. And they said, well, what happens if we have a white parent who complains? I said, well, I would ask them first, are you complaining about the fact that the school is disproportionately suspending Black girls? If not, do not want access to a resource, but you didn't care about the problem. And so we have to look at what our schools are doing, what they're teaching, how they're interacting with our students, and hold them accountable. I'm looking forward to and hoping here in Ohio, they are pushing to not allow it be based upon property taxes. There's a movement to get school funding be the same for all school districts, so every child has access to the resources that they deserve to have, not based upon where you live or what you look like.
I really appreciate your response, and it's interesting because I also taught teachers who were teaching on Navajo and Zuni reservations, and actually there the issues are less about more engaged involvement and learned helplessness, and so it's a different problem, but an incredibly challenging problem for teachers to figure out how to draw out. It's interesting, all of the different ways that kids have not been able to be kids in school and learning.
And I think when it comes to learned helplessness, one of the things that I also believe that teachers have to be about social justice, because you can spend 6 hours in a day telling them that they should believe that they're able to accomplish anything, and then you send them back into a world that marginalizes Native people on a daily basis. You look around reservations and you see the extreme poverty there that was placed upon them by our government. You see our government not support jobs, support resources being allocated to those communities, or things like the pipelines. It's the things that we find sacred, you're able to come in here and take them from us because you so desire. So in that, if we're sitting here and we're talking about learned helplessness, we must also say, well, this is learned helplessness. We must say we need to change this system, this world, because there's a reason why it's very difficult to believe that things are going to be all right, because when I'm putting things into place, the federal government can come in and change that. So.
Thank you so much. I feel like my brain is exploding right now with so much information. I'm like, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct. But I actually wanted to ask you about your experience as a woman of a published woman of color, and what kind of maybe barriers you faced while you were in like the publication process of getting your books out there. Because I've heard, a lot of horror stories from like fellow BIPOC folks that just like, countless rejections from publications, microaggressions, racism, etc. I'm curious if you ever faced any of those obstacles, how you overcame them. If it's all positive, I would love to hear about that too, but I'm assuming you probably hit some roadblocks along the way. But thank you so much for sharing everything.
So there are multiple different things here. One, some things I chose to self-publish because I wanted to be able to, one of the things I found out about publishing is that there's not a lot of times that people care about resources for Black girls and Black girl children. Some resources I actually published for the purpose of giving them away because I wanted access. The other things that are published, my lovely co-author is on here, was forced. by my co-author. And one of the things that was great about that is that that process was probably the easiest because he had access. He's very well known in the work that in that area where those resources were published. He's very well known, and so that being the case, there were no issues other than me being like, please don't make me do this. Please don't ask me to do this. But I do find that that wasn't easy. That was the easiest road because I wasn't the one asking for someone to utilize my thoughts. It was someone who already had access, who is a leader in that field, who said, I want you to do this with me. And so that process was probably the easiest one. So, and then I've contributed to some other books, and that's just been more so, they were authors, they had access, and they said, can you do this? Can you write this part of this? Can you be a part of this project? And so those were also fairly easy. But I did find in trying to do like the children's book and some other things I wanted to do, it was like, yeah, we need you to, have 500,000 followers, and people don't really want anything about this. Is a very specialized market. Black stuff cannot be read by anyone who's not Black, obviously. So it's a very specialized market. And so in those areas, I decided for myself, I wanted to provide these resources to communities. The human trafficking workbook, I put it in only a digital form that allowed it to be dispersed to rape crisis centers around the country and in some other countries. As here, you have this, I want this for girls. So I have the ability to do some of that. And that's the stuff I find fun. So there's that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If I can just jump in with one small comment that haunts me in all of this. Well, first of all, congratulations, Tyffani. I saw that this was happening at like 3 minutes before 7. I'm like, goodness gracious, that's like right now. So it's nice to be here. As we're talking about publishing and schools and curriculum, and I saw the comment about that David made, hidden shadow curriculum rooted in race and class. And I just have to say, as somebody who's worked in and around publishing, one of the most frightening things I've learned in the past few years is how many publishers refuse to publish any kind of a textbook unless they know that the school departments in Texas will approve it. Yeah. So okay. So you guys knew this. I hadn't realized just how much sway they really hold. So yeah. And I now work with this publisher that's we publish some really good stuff, but it won't be available everywhere. Texas, baby. I see it said. So the and because Tyffani won't say this herself, well, one of the coolest things that she said in putting together this workbook for young women was we're going to have to do this so that it's more than just changing Sam's to Samantha's and adding some pink to the color or to the cover. So that was Tyffani in a nutshell. Thank you, Tyffani.
Thank you, David.
Dr. Tyffani, I really appreciate you coming on today. It's been incredibly informative and enlightening. So I want to just thank you for speaking with us. I had less of a question, more of a clarification. I believe I heard you earlier use a term that I'm not familiar with, which was the sexual assault to prison pipeline. If you have the time, I would really appreciate if you could expound on that and kind of enlighten me on that concept.
I believe it's African American Policy Forum or Georgetown. They did a research project on this sexual abuse to prison pipeline. One of the things that we know is we look at pathways into delinquency, into the juvenile justice system. And one of those pathways for girls, specifically Black girls, is having a history of sexual victimization, and how they respond to their sexual victimization, specifically when there are not interventions put into place to assist them in navigating that space. So they began to look at not just the school to prison pipeline, but also this unique area of sexual abuse to prison pipeline for Black girls. And I will make a point to get you that research, because I have it in my computer. So I
Thank
will
you.
send it to David, and he can forward it on to whomever would like it.
Word, I'm really interested in that too. Thank you.
Yes, same.
Especially because that's a piece that we don't talk about a lot too. Like we don't talk about the number one, the increasing overcriminalization of Black girls, and that in addition to sexual assault, right? So
And I think the difficulty is, it's the irony is, we know that girls, research has demonstrated that girls are more likely to be sexually abused than boys. There's also been some research about what that looks like specifically for Black girls in terms of types of sexual abuse because of the ages in which it may occur. But we don't talk about that at all. But when it comes to the which we should, because it impacts Black girls a lot. But we're more willing to talk about things like the school to prison pipeline and the criminalization of Black children, because still Black boys make up a larger percentage in the criminal justice system than Black girls. And so it becomes an issue that our community is willing to address because of whom it impacts. We're also not willing to address sexual violence because we know that in most communities, other than the Native American community, where their perpetrators are more likely to be white males, your perpetrators, those who have caused you sexual harm, are more likely to come from your community because it's access. And so that being the case, we don't talk about sexual abuse within our community, because talking about sexual abuse then means talking about the fact that sexual abuse within our community is often caused by Black men and boys. And since our community always wants to protect Black men and boys, we're not going to have that conversation. Because our community also does not want to see the incarceration, understandably, of Black men and boys, because we know that system was not set up to rehabilitate anybody. We then want to minimize or distract from sexual abuse of Black women and girls, because then that would include a pathway into this system that we all know is unjust. So I'm not surprised we don't have those conversations. We have the conversations that center the impact on Black men and boys. Let me be clear: hetero, cisgendered Black men and boys. That's that sweet spot right there.
Well, as you know, the Truth Telling Project holds sacred the stories that individuals tell of their experience with violence, generally from police. And I'm just wondering, always looking ahead, how we could, if there's a place for documenting these stories and holding them in, keeping them safe on the Truth Telling Project website, or resource Time to Listen, where we have all these stories, and we build lessons units for teachers, and hope to do more of that, and to have teachers involved in creating curriculum around these stories. So I just want to put that out there. That's a
yeah, I just wanted to jump in and just say also the Black Women's Blueprint did a truth and reconciliation process around violence against Black women. I don't know if it's documented.
It is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And stories are up on their website. And also,
I will check to see if they're still up, but the Truth and Reconciliation, because we're doing some website redesign, but the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, yes, they did document the stories of Black women survivors of sexual violence specifically.
well, I do also want to take just a quick minute. My 3-year-old is yelling. But I wanted to just take a quick minute and encourage folk to, Tyffani, if you can add links to organizations that we should all support. If you have a Venmo or PayPal this is about you and about honoring your work, and just, you know how like it's your birthday and everybody Venmo you money for your drink. Well, it's your birthday and we want to Venmo you money for being you and doing the organizing that you're doing. And so, you know, this is about you. So feel free to put your personal Venmo in. I encourage it. Some people didn't do that, like they put in other orgs, but we're gonna take just this moment to intentionally take a few minutes to pull out our credit cards, to go into PayPal, to support you and the issues that you want to work with, or you, and that's perfectly fine, because
I never do that, right? I put organizations. One of the things I recognize is that I have privilege in the work that I do, that easily supports myself, my family, and allows me to give back my time and my funds to organizations who are doing work. So I never give anyone my Cash App. I've had people ask. I do instead direct them to organizations that I am passionate about the work that they are doing, that I wholeheartedly support. So there's Black Women's Blueprint, that was mentioned, the Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence, which is our statewide coalition for those working with survivors of sexual violence. And we have a Women of Color caucus, where we try to amplify women of color within our organizations, provide them spaces, assist them in moving up within the organizations, because it's important that our faces are seen by survivors and that we are also informing change. And then Lady Bound, because I'm all about girls. Lady Bound is an organization in Cleveland, Ohio that focuses on Black girls. It is an awesome mentoring program. It's been up and running for several years. They do community service, they do workshops, anything, and they're just this safe space for Black girls. So that is kind of how I do things. I'm always like, if you want to help me help the people who are out here on a daily basis making a difference, because that is so impactful and means so much to me. So they are there.
all right, folks, please, I'm making a donation right now. I'm intentionally pausing so that we can all support this important work in the ways that we can. Before we close out tonight, I just want to see if there are any more questions. Well, I want to thank everyone. Oh, go ahead, David.
Sorry, in 30 seconds or less, Tyffani, I'd really be interested with everything else you've got going on. What are some of your next steps? What kinds of things are you looking to do in the next 6 months or so?
One of my biggest is, now that I'm vaccinated, I'm spending more time with my mentoring group. COVID disrupted a lot of the things we were doing, and I've been excited to reconnect with them. I did a campaign to collect copies of this book called Dear Black Girl, to donate to Black girl serving organizations in Northeast Ohio. I wanted to collect 50. Within that 6 weeks, I have 56. So I've been connecting with caregivers of Black girls and Black girl serving organizations to try to get those things out and about. I have a lot of commitments related to speaking engagements, including with the person who's giving me a thumbs up. So a lot of speaking engagements, and Centering Sisters, I'm excited because we are going to do some in-person taping of some of our episodes and starting to plan. Hopefully, we'll be able for the fall. We had a workshop that we were going to put on for the city with those within probation and parole, with the school system, with therapists on how to best meet the needs of Black girls and Child Protective Services to really rethink how we engage with Black girls and how we determine what their needs are. So we are hoping to plan that again. If not in the fall, we're starting to say, hey, if COVID keeps happening, how do we get things in a row to be able to move into 2022? So that is, and I'm going to help my daughter who's decided she wants to actually write a book. So going to see how that goes.
Sleep is overrated.
It is. Who needs it? Again, that's that self-care is preservation that the self-preservation that I believe I have just not actively done. So
Nice.
So you all, I just want to thank you all for coming out. And I want to just, again, let's make sure, I don't know if we can do the emocon, like the clapping hands. Just shout out to Dr. Tyffani Montford Dent for your amazing work and commitment. And this is urgent work, urgent work. And just thank you so much. Again, our radical truth teller, Dr. Tyffani Montford Dent.
So
Thank you.
grateful.
thank
so
you.
much.
I appreciate it. I'm honored.
The
All right.
truth just set me free.
And we hope to be in contact and be in communication and collaboration, how we can be in community more and support each other's work. I see it coming. So, all right.
I'm excited and I'm hopeful.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you all for joining us. And please support the work that Dr. Tyffani Montford Dent has added in the chat, and I'm going to just repost it. Support that today in any amounts that you can. It's urgent and important work, and I can vouch for all of it. It's really important. Thank you all so much.